Chris Nolan is one of the best filmmakers working. And one of the things he said that follows right into my mantra, this was on the final trailer that we put out. He just said, it's good. It's just not great yet. And I thought that's exactly right.
Hello, I'm Jacqueline Coley, and welcome to Seen on the Screen podcast, brought to you by Make It Universal and Rotten Tomatoes, where we talk movies with some of the people behind the scenes at NBC Universal. When entertainment works best, sometimes it opens a window into a world we've never imagined. Other times, it shows us a mirror image of our lives with a heightened sense of home. Today, we're going to dig into the question, what have you seen on the screen that has done that? My guest today is Patrick Starr. Patrick, welcome to Seen on the Screen. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Well, first, most important question, that is, what do you do at NBC Universal? Sort of guide us through your job and what that means day to day.
So I'm Patrick Starr. I'm Executive Vice President of Creative Advertising at Universal Pictures, and that's on the marketing team. And what I do is make movie trailers, movie posters, TV commercials, digital ads, and anything where we have media dollars that we're spending to promote the theatrical release of our movie. I'm working with different folks to make sure we have the best materials we can put out there.
One thing I think is so interesting about this is maybe asking you to pick your favorite campaign would be like asking you to pick your favorite child. So I'm not going to do that. But is there a particular piece of media that you've worked on for a campaign that you're like, not only am I proud of this, but I think we really set the bar. Like, this is something that I'm like, when I'm done with my time at Universal, I'm always going to look back on this as being like, we did something there.
I mean, fortunately, there's a few of those, and I feel really lucky that there are. And there's probably a few that I wish never had happened, but you learn a lot from those ones.
We're not going to talk about those ones.
Yeah, exactly. But you have to learn from those ones, and those help you with the big ones that do work because you find ways to innovate. And I think the one for me that probably I'm the most proud of is the Straight Out of Compton campaign.
Yeah.
The first trailer that we made, and it was a really dynamic piece, and it had a lot of a unique approach to it, both musically and how we were going to work with NWA's music, but how we collaborated with Dre and Cube, and just the opportunity to collaborate with these guys is in and of itself an amazing opportunity. But they really understood that they wanted to make, in some ways, their opus of their story of what they were doing, and they pushed us to try to do things in ways that was also very different than have been done in movie marketing before. And so it was such a great collaboration, and to be able to use them as sort of colleagues in artistry and talking about what it was to make a trailer and to bring that trailer to the world was really, really exciting for me.
I love that.
Yeah.
I will say, marketing folks, you guys have to keep so many things a secret. Like before, you got to be quiet on that Super Bowl trailer for Wicked before that goes.
Yeah.
But if you can maybe preview some of the stuff that maybe by the time this podcast episode happens might be out, but you could sort of like tease us a little bit for some upcoming campaigns and things that you're sort of excited about.
Yeah, sure. I mean, currently we have this summer coming Twisters, the Lee Isaac Chung film, which is phenomenal. It's one of those movies that you just enjoy in the middle of summer because it's wildly and entertaining and immersive. Yeah. It's exciting. It's dangerous. It's what you want from a theatrical experience. That is just so fun to work on. And anytime you work on an Amblin movie, it's really exciting. And, Jurassic is going to have another movie coming. So that's getting up and running soon. And hopefully by the time this is out there, they'll be at least filming and getting closer to being done. And that's going to be really fun next summer to see that come to the world, because it's going to be extremely different than it was before.
Oh, wow.
And then my sort of most excited, anxious and anticipated movie is The Wild Robot from DreamWorks. Yeah. We have that coming in September, and it's such a unique, high quality film. You don't see movies like this made very often. And it is so funny, so heartwarming, so original, so creative. And the visual style is like something I've never seen before. So that, I hope, really sort of explodes in the pop culture of the world when it releases in the fall.
Yeah, and Lupita Nyong'o's in that one too, which I'm very excited to see what she brings. She's done so many already great voice acting performances.
Her performance is phenomenal in
Wow.
it. It's unlike a traditional performance, because she has to play roles in a way that evolves and grows from a robot into almost a sentient human.
Wow.
So there's a sense of growth from technology to having emotional qualities.
Oh, wow. I can't wait to watch it. What would you say really makes a good trailer? Because I've seen bad ones, obviously, and I've seen amazing ones, but I don't think I would really know the science behind what makes one exceptional or extraordinary.
Yeah, it's definitely an art form unto itself to make a trailer. It's why there are expert editors and producers and people who write music specifically for trailers, because you're trying to create empathy for a character. And that's why people go to movies, is because they care about what's going to happen to somebody and they want to relate to that character. They want to feel what they're going through and ultimately, hopefully, see how they resolve some issue that you can then learn from and grow from and have some sort of experience from. And I think even if it has to be entertaining and it has to be all these other things, but if you can create empathy with the character, then you can do that in a trailer in about 2 minutes and accomplish that. It's sort of like if you have a movie that's 2 hours long and you're trying to cut a 2-minute trailer, you really have to find every little essence that matters the most in order to get that across in such a short form. And short form storytelling is very different than long form storytelling. Poetry is very different than prose. It's just one of those things where when you have a song that's a full length or you remix it, like you're playing with different forms within this art form of storytelling and trying to do it in as concise of a manner as possible. So if you can emotionally connect to a character, you're more likely to elicit an emotional reaction from people. And if that happens, I just believe you're more likely then to buy a ticket to go see it in a theater because you want to feel that feeling again. And whether you're doing that through the storytelling of that character, or you're doing it through the music that you put in there, or through the moments that you're picking and how you're really designing them so there is some evolution to them, it's really probably a combination of all of those things. And you're constantly trying to mix and match and revise and explore different ways of pairing moments and ideas together so that you're making the best possible trailer you can. And I think it's that journey. It's that exploration of what's the best possible combination and trying a lot of different things that makes sort of the difference between good and great trailers.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that. Somebody that's sort of near and dear to our heart at Rotten Tomatoes is Roger Ebert. And he has this great quote that movie making at its greatest is an empathy machine that lets you walk in the shoes of someone that you've never met before. So I think that's interesting. That's also the philosophy of making these trailers. But doing it in 2 minutes makes it so much harder. Also, just the idea of short form content is so much harder. Was that something you always liked, were always attracted to?
Yeah, for me, I always loved movies. I always loved unique movies, and short form advertising was always appealing to me. I've always enjoyed Super Bowls for their commercials, but I enjoy the commercials all year round. Like I've always, ever since I was young, been kind of fascinated with what they are, just because as a kid, you'd watch TV and there'd always be commercials on. You couldn't skip commercials. You couldn't go through it. You couldn't, get around them. What I really realized was working in entertainment marketing is an intersection of short form with commercials that are not selling soap or cars. You're selling human emotions because you're selling the story of these movies, or these, if you work at any entertainment company, it's a story of a person and a character in some way. And I love that you can do that. And I think it's what people want from entertainment is some sort of cathartic experience. And so to be able to work in some capacity to try to engineer that and to try to take someone's film that they've worked on for so long and put everything into and say, all right, I'm going to do my best I can for you to connect this to the audience so that as many people will see it as possible, and to experience what you've engineered and crafted and built and designed as an artist. That's a very satisfying thing for me. So I've loved the short form way of being able to compel people to go see a movie and do that.
Sounds like you're obviously a film fan. And now we're actually going to dive into the world of movies and things that you've seen on the screen. And we're going to do that with our little popcorn bucket. So if you'll excuse me, these are things that Don't worry about it's not heavy.
Let's hope my memory serves me well.
Let's hope. Again, these are things that are probably near and dear to your heart. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a quote. And hopefully you remember exactly what movie it's from. And then maybe sort of what your story is with it. He may have advanced delusionary schizophrenia with involuntary narcissistic rage, but he's a very gentle person. You know this one?
That's a specific quote.
It is a specific quote. Do you remember it though?
I do remember it. I don't think I remember it word for word but I remember the idea of it. And also just, it's a movie that's so specific to my career in this industry, which is Me, Myself, and Irene, right?
That's correct. 2000,
the Jim Carrey movie. That was the first movie I ever worked on, actually. And it was a really unique experience because I happened to be working in a restaurant, and the crew that was making the movie were coming in for dinner after they would wrap production. And I knew I wanted to work in film, or I thought I wanted to work in film. I just graduated, and I thought, I'm going to ask them everything I can about what they're doing. And I just kept asking more and more questions and meeting people that were art directors and production designers and grips and gaffers and assistant directors. And I didn't really even understand what all that meant necessarily, except that I knew that what they were doing was really interesting. I had already studied some film and had really been interested in it, and had made a couple movies with students and everything. So I knew enough to get through at least a PA job, which is what I basically got as a job on there as a local, and just worked to charge walkie-talkies basically for a couple months.
That gives you a lot of time to ask questions, though. Like
does.
If you were like running around, you would have been able to ask as many questions.
Right. Well, and I've always felt like when I'm in a situation, if I meet somebody, I'm going to take that opportunity to ask them questions and try to learn more about what I can, because especially if I'm with people who have more experience than me in anything, especially I've never, when you start out in a career, the thing you can offer the most is hard work, and you're not going to have the experience or the knowledge or the wisdom or be the smartest person in the room. But if you can be the hardest working and then through that ask questions, it shows that you're interested and passionate about this work. So it, I think, has helped me through my career to have that mantra. And I sort of started that on that set and in that restaurant when I first started meeting with them, but especially on that set, because I realized movie sets have a lot of hurry up and wait. Like they're like, hurry up, we gotta go. And then it's like, okay, we're gonna wait for a long time. We're gonna sit around for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, hours, who knows? Hopefully not hours. So it's problematic. But and in that wait time, I learned to just talk to people, and ask questions and figure out how to learn more from each and every person there who has more experience.
I just have a curiosity because I just made this connection. You started on Me, Myself, and Irene, and then I'm guessing during your tenure here was also when we did Green Book. Did you make the connection back to Peter when he came back and be like, hey, just so you know?
It's funny. I did not work on Green Book. There was another creative executive who did, so I didn't have the opportunity to say, hey, good to see you again. And I intended to, and I almost went to him and found him to tell him that like this is where my career started, and I'm so glad I'm here now. And I have these fond memories of that set too, because they had a lot of fun. And like I just remember like Peter and Bobby and Jim riding bikes and goofing around on set and making the whole set feel like it was really a fun place to be and not a arduous time, you know. So they definitely enjoy filmmaking, and I would imagine. Hopefully they hear this someday and they'll at least hear that connection. I hope
they're watching. Peter Farrelly, sir, if you're watching this, I hope you're enjoying your Academy Awards, but also you're responsible for this gentleman over here a little bit. So kudos.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. This is our next quote. We're all traveling through time together every day of our lives. All we can do is our best to relish this remarkable ride.
I wish I spoke that eloquently.
I mean, don't we all?
My goodness, I love movies for that reason.
Yeah.
I said the perfect thing at the right time, in the right space, and you kind of wish in life you could do that, I think that's one of the things I love about film so much. It almost makes me want to cry thinking about this movie because I like it so much. It's called About Time, right? It's a movie that is so much about appreciating the moments and really being in the moments. And the fact that he can time travel, but then really ultimately doesn't want to in the end and just wants to be in the moment is so great.
Yeah. So, Donald Gleason, Rachel McAdams, right?
Yep.
Richard Curtis.
Yep. Bill Nye plays the dad.
Yeah.
And it's a great father-son story. It's a great husband-wife story. It's a great sort of young love story. And it's such a simple movie. Like it doesn't have crazy visual effects or anything like that. It's all right there in a kind of great Richard Curtis way. And I think movies about time travel are interesting to me, like, because it's that sense of what could you do if you could change something, and ultimately to live a life where you feel like you wouldn't change anything is pretty great feeling, I would think.
Yeah.
So I watch that movie and then I always go home and hang out with my kids.
Yeah, that's exactly what that one does. It's an interesting concept too about like the perfect day, and it's the day that you maybe don't appreciate being the perfect day until you get to relive it over again.
Right.
So I'm curious for you, have you had one of those sort of like perfect day moments at Universal? Maybe somebody came in, maybe you got to chat with somebody, maybe you got to relate what you do back to like your family, or like bring them on a premiere or a set or something like that.
I mean, every day working here is like a amazing day. Like it really
Facts.
is. I've never felt like I'm working at a job. And it's one of the beautiful things about doing something that you're passionate about is that it's just so exciting all the time. Right. And I really, love the whole process and all the people that do it, because it's all so much of people who don't live perfect lives, right? And we all recognize that. And there's so many imperfections in things. And so all you can do is work to try to make stories that make you feel better about things in some way and feel improved in some way. And look, I think there was maybe a perfect summer in a way here. I've worked here now for 14 years. And so I do remember the summer of 2015 was just one of those summers that...
Yeah, that was Jurassic World, right?
There was Jurassic World. There was Pitch Perfect 2 that summer, and we had Straight Outta Compton as well. And it was just an unbelievable summer of success. Yeah. And the movies were amazing. For me, they were accomplishing kind of what I hope to do with all of our films, which is create pop culture events. And they did them with different audiences in different ways in a summer that just felt like we could do no wrong in some sense. And it wasn't like those movies were all just obvious successes. And I think that's where you feel like, okay, marketing can have an impact on how successful a movie is or how many people get to see that movie. And it's super satisfying that it does when it does actually connect like that.
Yeah, that was a good song. That's a great year. I didn't think about it that way, but of course you would. You'd be like, no, 2015. Yeah. We know what we did. We know what we did.
There was a lot of good days that summer.
I love it. This is our third quote, our last one. It's fun. It's healthy. It's good exercise. The kids will just love it. And we put a little sand inside to make the experience more pleasant.
You delivered that well.
Thanks.
I try.
I try. If the casting department is watching this, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, you are ready.
No, go ahead.
It's so funny because when people ask me my favorite movie and I tell them, they're like, what movie? Like they've never heard of it very often, and understandably because it was not a hit.
Definitely not.
Definitely not. But it was the Coen brothers, the Hudsucker Proxy. And that was his hula hoop invention, I think he's talking about, which it's such a screwball comedy, weird movie. Stars Tim Robbins in a role where he plays this guy who grows up in the middle of the country and moves to a big city and does it in the pursuit of an idea that he has for making a new product. And he faces the whole corporate world of what is the Hudsucker Industries. And, Hudsucker means basically greedy, right? So it's like you walk into this greedy world and try to figure out your place in it. And naively, innocently, but ambitiously, and with a sort of smile on his face, I think was something that stuck with me because I kind of thought, is he navigating this because he's just being kind through the process, and he always was sort of naively positive about things. And for as some sort of screwball comedic as that can be, there's something that almost felt like a path or an indicator to me of like, okay, if you're going to go into a place where people don't know you and you have something you want to say or to try to convey to people, then do it with some kindness at least and lead with that, because at least then you'll be doing it with your best self.
Yeah.
So I learned how to navigate Hollywood through a screwball comedy starring Tim Robbins, maybe.
About the hula hoop. About the hula hoop. Exactly.
And the Frisbee.
Yeah, and the Frisbee. No, fair. That's right. Hula hoop and Frisbee. I forgot about that.
Great adventure.
I just love that great picture from the trailer of him like holding the hula hoop just like this with the eyes. He looks like a mad scientist.
Yeah. And it's just a circle drawn on that picture. That's all it is. And he just keeps showing it to people. It's just a picture of a circle and they don't understand what it is even. He's like, for kids.
It's funny that you mentioned that. It's also kind of the story of marketing and how, like, if you don't market it well, nobody's going to understand what you need. And like, there's a moment where it takes him a long time to translate his great idea into something that's digestible. I guess that's marketing, right?
You know what? I think this has more meaning for me now.
This is meta.
I'm going to watch this tonight again with that lens. And absolutely, I can see that.
One of the more recent, I would say, not just successes, phenomenal successes is Oppenheimer. That was a win, both artistically, creatively, marketing-wise, audience-wise. I imagine there's probably some really great moments working with Nolan. Again, for the first time that he was outside of a different studio in almost 2 decades. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah, it was such an amazing opportunity. Chris Nolan is one of the best filmmakers working and has been working for such a long time. And I've admired his films for so long. I never really thought the opportunity would come. And here we are, right? And then it came. And I remember so many moments vividly because from the moment of walking in and reading the script and then talking to him about it, there were certain things we kind of connected on. But there was definitely times too when we would go through the process of creating trailers and making trailers and presenting them to him that he'd give feedback on it that was really insightful. And one of the things he said that follows right into my mantra of kind of how I try to approach things at a certain point was, this was on the final trailer that we put out. He just said, it's good. It's just not great yet. And I thought that's exactly right. Like that is the good is the opposite of great mentality. And I think that's something that embodies everything that he does with every discipline he works with. And that did lead us to go back and to have an interesting conversation about like, well, what is that missing element? And we ultimately pushed for more patriotism into it to try to get a little bit more of an emotional uplift in that trailer. And it really worked. And it ultimately made it feel like there was just an energy to it that got us over the hump of what was ultimately a bunch of guys sitting around in a room talking, right?
Yeah. That's a great joke around the Universal lot now. It's like, we made almost $1 billion. There's just a bunch of dudes in a room talking. Like, you can't say that's not a good idea if you do it right.
Yeah. I could probably list a handful of movies that we've lost a lot of money on from a bunch of dudes sitting around in a room talking too.
Fair. But y'all did
but
it.
none were directed by Chris Nolan either.
Fair.
So
Look, I guess it's to your point. If you make it good, maybe that doesn't work. But if you make it great, it will.
Well, I really do think that. I think for a movie to be theatrical, it kind of needs to be exceptional in order for it to work, and especially for it to leg out and play, because audiences are so discerning and they also don't have the time or the patience for it, and they can get really good stuff at home. So why would you go to a theater unless it's exceptional? And I think that's ultimately our job, is to figure out how to make it exceptional. And that's what Chris Nolan does. Like, he's constantly looking at every single thing we look at and go, is this the exceptional version of itself? And he'll be the first to say it is, and rightfully so. Like, he has great taste. So that helps quite a bit.
Yeah. Confidence in his taste, as I think Rick Rubin would say.
Those are, Rick knows. That's a
Rick knows.
That's a good combo.
All right. So now we're going to dive into more things that you've seen on the screen.
Okay.
It's true or false. So I'm going to make a statement about a movie that's hopefully familiar for you. And you're going to be like, yes, this is right, or no, this is wrong. Okay? Steven Spielberg's 1982 iconic film E.T. the Extraterrestrial was in theaters for 81 weeks, making it the longest running theatrical release in history. True or false?
That's a good question. He's had a lot of movies in theaters for a long time. He's like the blockbuster guru. I think Jurassic Park was maybe longer, but...
So you're saying false?
I'm going to say false, but I don't know what the number one is if it's not him.
You did great already, because it is false. But it is not even his. You know what it is? It's The Sound of Music. Which I'm like, I get that.
Interesting.
The hills are alive, kids.
Yeah.
It's the longest running theatrical release at 140. Do you?
I was wondering about Avatar, even, if that was up there.
I think Avatar was up there too. Either way, like, I think he probably, he's up in that like top 10 area and probably has multiple entries.
I was going to say Jaws, Jurassic Park, E.T., all three of those have to be a lot. Jaws created it, right?
I mean, honestly, just the idea of having something, past a calendar year. Like, you know what I mean? That's almost 3 calendar years that you're doing that with Sound of Music. They were like, we will see this again. But, we should think about it this way, though, because E.T. did not have the longest theatrical release, but it did have the most weeks at number 1. So that's like a bully. That's like a bully statement right there. It's like, no, nobody was taking me down for weeks and weeks. So it did have that record.
I think being longest at number 1's pretty solid for a stat.
Very solid.
Yeah.
I don't know. That kid may have a bright future. I don't know. He might have been able to do some things. E.T. for you?
E.T. is such a personal movie for me because it was the first movie I saw in theater. And so, I walked out of there thinking that was real. Like, I did not really understand because it was such a grounded in real world thing. And Spielberg is the one who I think has probably done that the best of any filmmaker, is that grounded in reality, but a sense of fantasy to it. And I think that's something that really struck me as a kid, since that was my first theatrical experience, and always became core to me in some of the movies that I loved the most too, because it allows you to go to another place and kind of dream big and think anything's possible, and gives you that sense of almost Hudsucker Proxy-esque unbridled naivete that anything is possible. And I think in some ways you want to have that in life, to be able to have confidence when you're facing adversity too.
One of the things I miss from the current age of streaming, which is actually something that they do better on Peacock, I will say, is this idea of having movie channels where you can like stumble upon something. Like, there's a Rotten Tomatoes channel, in case folks that don't know. And you can, but it's this idea, like E.T., that's what it was for me. I stumbled upon it as a, 8-year-old kid, because I was too young to see it theatrically, but it still hit me in that same way. Like, I remember it being like, whether it was TNT or something like that, or maybe USA, and just like, oh, this is the like E.T. movie. And then you got to find out when it plays again so you can VHS record it. I am dating myself just slightly so you can fast forward the commercials. Yes, that's what we used to do.
You know what's strange? You're the second person today who said to me they VHS recorded something because they
Yeah.
were talking about the Fall Guy and the original Lee Majors.
Yes.
And they would VHS record that.
Listen, I remember the running joke was people couldn't figure out how to program their VCRs.
Right.
It was like so complicated. I'm like, you do not know the hells that we went through just to watch a movie every Friday night.
That's right. That's
But
right.
We've made it through. We made it through.
Mhm.
And I loved E.T. because of it.
Stronger for it.
Exactly. Let's move on to our second trivia question. Many of the writers of Rohan in Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, were actually women with very convincing but fake beards. True or false?
I have no idea.
You don't?
I will take a guess only because I've been down to New Zealand and seen those production facilities and know they probably use every single person that lives down in New Zealand to make these films. So I'm going to say yes, it's true. That makes a lot of sense because the New Zealand folks definitely work together, support each other, and figure out ways to make films together in great ways.
So you've been down there?
Yeah.
Oh, I have not, but I did watch all of the Lord of the Rings extended edition with the appendices, and they talk about this, how they like bearded up these girls. Because again, how many horse riders do you have? And you're trying to make a convincing army of horse people, and those ladies slayed with those beards. Rather than assembling hundreds of actors and putting them on horses, it made more sense for production to gather riders from the area of New Zealand who already had bonds with the horses of their own. In the end, local women played the majority of the riders.
That's fantastic.
Because they showed up and they did what they needed to do, ladies.
There you go.
And they slayed with those.
I love it.
I've seen that too, where they're like talking about how like, all right, you got to position her a little further back because like we can tell, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like we got to put the guys for the shot.
Right.
But yeah, no.
I love that. I got to tell my daughter about that because we watched The Lord of the Rings together with my family, and they were really into it. And it's a fun thing about having kids and bringing some of these movies that are classics to them. And they really appreciate it. They love sort of the filmmaking, the storytelling. They more than anything, they love the darker elements of the storytelling too. The scarier parts, the villainous parts, the things with Gollum, like those things are really pique their curiosity. And so that's one of those things about movies, I think, too, is when you're a kid, you can experience danger in a safe way. And it's really appealing in some way. It's cathartic in some way.
I mean, and it's not to say that they don't do this. I think Wild Robot might be a step into this direction for us, but like Illumination and DreamWorks both, I mean, the kids that were raised on that and maybe Pixar, they've lived in this very fluffy cotton candy world. So I could see how they'd be very intrigued with that. And like The Hobbit is a kid's story and The Lord of the Rings is not, but kids loved it. It was like a teenage story. So I could really see that.
Yeah, for sure.
Talking about this year again. In the 2015 movie Straight Out of Compton, NWA gets a letter from the FBI saying that one of their songs promoted violence against law enforcement. The actual letter is on display at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which inducted NWA in 2016. Is this true or false?
I mean, that's got to be true because it's such an iconic thing that they sent them a letter. The FBI sent them a letter basically saying that they couldn't perform because they were causing too much uproar or something. Like it was and that just motivated them even more. So I could imagine the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame was like, oh yeah, we're gonna get this.
Oh yeah, this is
so that's gonna be a collectible of some sort.
Absolutely, a piece of history that has to be preserved through all time.
Yes.
I think this was a moment in one of the trailers, and quote me if like maybe I'm just remembering it from the movie, but I think in one of the trailers y'all actually key in on this idea of like when they would buy the records and then destroy them, and you're like, they still buying them. Like I remember that in like a TV spot. That was one of the TV spots for that one. Oh, I would love to know the conversations around like, oh no, this is a hero moment. Because there's a ton of hero moments in that movie, but I love that you pulled that one out.
If I remember correctly, I believe it was a pickup shoot where they had the roller going over the records too. And it was something that Cube was like, yeah, we got to put that in there. That's a good moment. That shows the defiance of like, yeah, go ahead, destroy him. Fantastic. We're making more money.
Wow.
You know, and I've always, Cube's sense of being a businessman is one of his strongest personality qualities. He's so smart in that way. And it's always thinking about, you know, what does this do for I mean, in the story of the movie, he's the one who's understanding the brand of NWA and who they are as a group and what they mean, not just to each other, but to the people around them and then also to the world at large, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's what made them so successful is because in many ways, he had this ability to understand sort of from 50,000 feet what they were doing. And I'm not saying that the others didn't, but Cube knew somehow how to be the spokesperson for that.
Yeah.
You know, and to be able to do that takes a real unique person.
Yeah. And making sure the money was right. That was definitely something that you got from the movie.
Oh, yeah, for sure. For sure.
Thank you for today. Thank you for taking us on your journey working at, NBC, Universal, and just your journey with Universal Film. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate the time today.